Okay, we're up.
Okay, so I will call this meeting to order. We have one addition to the agenda tonight under J. Homeless Coalition site. Additionally, we need to add a closed session for HR. So it looks to be a very full meeting tonight. Motion to accept the agenda as amended. Thank you, Councillor Gramlich. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Before we get any further, I would like to start with the land acknowledgement. And so in the spirit of respect, authenticity, and reconciliation, the town of Slave Lake honors and acknowledges that we are situated on the traditional lands of Saurid's First Nation within Treaty 8 territory, home to Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit people who have occupied these lands since time immemorial. So with that, we will jump into the agenda. CEO update, any quick little tidbits?
Yep, I'll give you a couple of highlights from the report that's before you there. Just under health and safety, a note that we did the town and its staff did a safety stand down event this past week on September 8th. Quick update in regards to human resources and recruitment. A number of positions have recently been filled: a bylaw enforcement officer, casual rec assistant, economic development officer, which was reclassified as a manager of communications and economic development, peace officer, and a senior firefighter. So there's currently a number of open staffing actions still before us. In terms of finance, a quick update: DRP claims have all been submitted to the province and received from prior years. There's approximately $5,000 for ineligible expenses, which is really good. 7 new business licenses were issued within the last month. And work continues on the operating budget for 2023-2024 capital budgets and operating budgets. In terms of operations, public works, a number of activities have been completed over the last month. Line painting, freshening up was done on some faded lines and parking. They're beginning to do their sweeping program for the fall. Grading gravel roads as needed, spray patching, crack sealing, and bringing in winter sand in preparation for the upcoming winter season. Utilities continues to be flushing and winterizing hydrants and getting ready. Fire department had a total of 42 calls for the month of August. Community services, aquatics, the pool is shut down, is underway. Contractors are supposed to be wrapping up their work this week, scheduled to reopen October 11th. FCS fall programming is starting up slowly. Information is going out through our media channels and Voyant in the upcoming weeks. And in terms of the facilities and parks, the ice is in both arenas. User groups are starting up their seasons over the next month, and fall maintenance has begun on our buildings in preparation of the winter season.
Okay, questions from council? Going once, going twice. Okay, let's jump into management task list on page 4 on our package. I'm gonna skip highlights and just jump into any questions from council. Going once, going twice. Councillor Adams.
Just one quick one. I was asking about motion 281-19. That's one titled peace officer appointments. It's been outstanding since August 20th, 2019. Is this something we still want to keep on this, as it's been over 3 years, and just with capacity and everything before my time? I'm just wondering, is this still something that we should be chasing down, or should we just get rid of it?
There hasn't been any other progress to date other than there. It's kind of sitting at a standstill until there's a change in policy or change in direction from Solgen. So at this point, I would recommend we potentially just conclude it and reevaluate it should there be a change in program or change in opportunity.
Okay, we'll leave administration to deal with that for next meeting there, that it will come off as completed. Any other questions, comments? Motion to accept the management task list as information. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. We will jump into committee updates. So let's start with intermunicipal. Some groundbreaking stuff going on there. So intermunicipal met yesterday. One of the items discussed there was around our fire services agreement and our intermunicipal agreement. And so both these agreements expire at the end of this year. Some people remember that in past history, these have been very contentious items. There's a couple of things in there that we did some minor cleanup, but for basically philosophically, most of the things are all staying the same. One item that is coming out that will go into its own agreement is around some of the water and sewer provisions that are built currently into the intermunicipal agreement. It makes sense now that we put in the raw water line that runs through MD lands, and just understanding how we access that and who pays for what and that sort of thing. But councils on both sides, it was unanimous that we basically bring back those cleaned up agreements to both of our councils for a decision. So that was huge progress there, and I appreciate the work done by administration and both councils to get us to that point prior to those agreements expiring. But largely, both town taxpayers and MD taxpayers will not see a substantial change in service level or the cost for what's associated there. Any questions? Let's jump into watershed.
Watershed's had a couple things. We had a meeting just last week. A few things that they've put out is they're getting more into schools this year. They've already started that programming, trying to get some uptake from teachers. Let's Go Outdoors collaboration video has been put together. Their Eyes on Slave Lake project is also taking off. They've got 2 cameras on the lake now that you can access, and they're actually trying to get advertising to be able to continue to offer this option. Splash Fest that they operated was a success and had a great turnout. And the Big Lakes County ALUS program is moving forward. If we know someone in the neighboring municipalities for the project, it would be good to have them have their turn. And that's about it. This summary of the report, I will kick over to communications as well to help out with the video. I think we already committed to putting that video on our websites and try and share that out and partner with them in that.
Questions? Yep. I see none. District Chamber of Commerce. Alberta North Central Alliance has not met. Housing.
Have not met.
Tri-Council Health.
We just had a meeting last week. The biggest thing that came out of it is we're in a bit of a health crisis now with regards to our nursing and nurse practitioner shortage. With regards to our service levels, they are still providing the same service level, but there is some reduced bed capacity. We've learned in the meeting that this is not just a Slave Lake problem, that this is a province-wide and country-wide issue. We really need nursing staff. It's going to affect in the future our ability to get new services, specifically with regards to chemotherapy and other surgical initiatives. They would like to clarify that the obstetrical services are still being offered, that has not been closed. So just for those that have been hearing that in the community, that it is still running, but it is getting to a critical level. They said in the meeting that our nurses are working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. The service, the level of commitment that they're putting in right now is really commendable, but there's going to be burnout shortly. And as far as doctors, we have 1 doctor retiring and 1 doctor that is going to be on parental leave. So there's only 1 doctor accepting new patients at the moment, and everyone else has full patient panels.
Questions? I will just add that council recently did a tour for a new physician, and so we're hard at recruitment, but it is ongoing. Tourism.
So basically tourism was busy the past summer months here, planning and executing the All-In event. Just want to give a quick thank you to all of the many groups and volunteers and everyone who collaborated with us to make it such a success. Currently, tourism is hiring for an executive director, and you can view the job listing on our Facebook page. We are having a meeting this week. We're looking at engaging with more of our local tourism operators here. We're also trying to fill some board seats as well. And we have some new leads on a couple different grant funds that we're going to be exploring as well.
Questions? Library,
Have not met.
naming advisory has not met. Community Futures,
Have not met.
CC,
Has not met yet.
Homeless Coalition.
So some good news. We recently did hire an executive director. Jackie Fremo is her name. Her first day was this Monday. Some of the board went through and toured her through the community, so that should help with some operational stability for the coalition. On another note, though, we still have not been able to find a location for this winter. We hoped over summer we would, but it yielded no results. So as such, the Homeless Coalition did reach out to the town and ask for support as we are approaching winter soon and we are nearly in an emergency situation without a site. So a report regarding that matter is included in the agenda for discussion later on.
Any questions? Children Resource Center.
A couple things with that is it's going to echo the same process as last time. The new executive director is making grounds forward, especially in our Slave Lake region. We seem to be getting a little more of the attention lately, which is good to hear. It seems to be heading there. But again, we do need director representation from on the board. And it'd be good to have anyone from the public willing to go into that and step up would be great, as they're very short on board members at this time. And the only thing I could say is let's have a voice in there that expresses our Slave Lake opinion as well and how we can be benefit more from this great service.
Questions? MPC,
Did not meet.
SDAB hasn't met. Waste,
Have not met.
Airport,
Have not met.
Legacy met last week, but I was in Edmonton. And so I missed the update there, but Protective Services.
We met today. There was a lot of different committee or groups that were present, but I'm just going to give a quick highlight. We had 154 fires in the region over the course of the fire season. There were 3 or 4 solid multi-start fire nights from lightning. They also did a camera detection trial period on the Martin Mountain Fire Tower. They used 6 different vendors to see if a technology would be better than having someone in the fire tower. What they have learned is that the staff caught fires 5 to 10 minutes before the technology did, and that the technology was also confused with road dust and steam from the mills. So they're going to make a recommendation that the Martin Mountain Fire Tower continues to be staffed. With regards to the fire department, there's been an increase in medical calls. We also have a 6-person recruit class that's going through some training and additional evaluation. There's a bit of an issue with retention, as is everywhere. They've lost a few members in the past month, but they're working to bring that number up to the full complement. Almost done. With regards to search and rescue, there's only been 3 or 4 calls since the last meeting in February. We also have Fire Prevention Week coming up October 9th to 16th, and they'll be looking at having a open house barbecue at the fire hall.
Questions? As I see none, last 3 haven't met, so I'll take a motion to accept committee verbal updates as information. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. We'll jump into reports and new business here, and we've got about 10 of them. So Darcy, we look forward to your summarized version of your report.
I promise I'll be fast.
Okay.
So we did a second call for external FCSS grants and we received 6 applications, which is great because last time we only had 2. One of them does not qualify, which is Lakeside Figure Skating Club. They're not eligible because they're a sport organization and there's certain criteria that have to be met under FCSS regulations. The other ones that do qualify is ULA's Active Rehabilitation applied for a seniors and independence program for 2350. The Children's Resource Council applied for a teen program for 7,075. Lesser Slave Regional Arts Council applied for Art in the Park, which just happened, but they fronted the funds. And that's for 2475. And the Native Friendship Center applied for the Tree of Warmth for some support to provide more things there for $500. And Slave Lake and Area Wellness Society, which is new. They fall under the umbrella of the Ecumenical Church. They applied for $6,000 for women's wellness sessions. So we had a really nice broad perspective from different areas that fall within FCSS. And so my recommendation is to fund fully the 5 that all fit within FCSS parameters for a total of $18,400.
Okay, questions, comments from council? Councillor Ferguson.
So the one for $7,075, the High Prairie District Children's Resource Council. So I read through some of the stuff. It said it's going to be centered around in Slave Lake, but what checks and balances are there to ensure that the funds that we're giving ensure that the programming does stay here?
That one's taking place in the 3 Slave Lake schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And
Thank
that
you.
was right in their application.
Okay, awesome.
Christine from here is actually running it.
Awesome. Thank
It'll
you.
be in person. Yeah.
Other questions? I'll just throw a quick comment, Darcy. I actually really love to the appendix that you threw in that shows all the grant funding for the last 7 years and all the different organizations it went to. The idea is that this funding can't be something that an organization needs to rely on every time. And so giving us a reminder is fantastic. I appreciate that.
Awesome. After this, we'll still have $8,000 left to give away. So there may be one more call, but we're kind of running out of time. Has to be spent by the end of the year.
Fair enough. Councillor Ward. I'm gonna struggle with that one just for like another year or two.
The name change just gets people. I really like the breadth of options here and the variety of groups that it's supporting. So I would make a motion that council approves the $18,400 in external community grant FCSS funds for summer 22 as follows. Do I need to read those all out or
Let's just say as listed.
as listed?
Okay, any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kush, you're up. We're on page 24 in our package.
Good evening, your worship, members of council. So first report is to provide update to council regarding the 2018 Town of Slave Lake Disaster Recovery Program. So we had a flood event that happened in 2018, and there was infrastructure damage that was caused by overland flooding at the time. So there were additional efforts that were undertaken to repair the damaged areas due to the flood event. It also includes, at the time we had capital projects going on, so those were also affected. So contractor has to undertake extra work in order to fix those. So long story short, we put in 7 claims for the 2018 flood event. If you can refer to attachment 1, that's the summary of all the claims that we put in. So we had 7 claims while working with DRP. During the course, they came back and said that the claim number 5 would be ineligible. So that was removed from our 7 claims, and ultimately they agreed to pay $524,000, which was accepted as an eligible amount of our estimated municipal claim, which was $601,000. So which is still 87% of the cost we were able to recoup. And yeah, my report is just for information purpose.
Questions, Councilor Graham?
I was going to make a motion that council accepts this report as information.
Any more discussion?
I do have one quick question.
What?
Just a quick question. Why are the ball diamonds and walking paths deemed ineligible?
They have a specific criteria where I think there was water on the ball diamonds, but when it receded, it didn't leave too much of damage, right? And community services had plans to go out and fix it, but again, it was never expensed. Like they were just waiting for DRP to confirm it as an eligible cost, but they just said, no, it won't be. So we had never expensed anything for that project.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Motions on the floor, call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. We'll jump into page 27. capital updates.
So next is just to provide updates to council on 2022 capital projects. We have a lot of projects going on this year. I'll start with lift station C, Force Main. So we have installed the contractor has installed more than 50% of the force main pipe already to date. They are expecting to complete the final tie-in at the lift station by end of September. And the road restoration work will be completed by mid-October as per the schedule that was provided. Downtown revitalization, the North Plaza work is all complete. Boulders were installed. Information kiosk is getting fabricated. The center sign is in the final design stage. And then the South Plaza work has already started. So they will start with the curb pours first, and then they will start backfilling behind the curbs and then put the surface up.
Yeah, sorry, for the benefit of ease of flow here, we'll jump in questions after each one.
Kush, I was wondering how far that design process is for the centerpiece.
So we had a concept that was discussed internally, and based on that concept, we sketched something. It was provided to a design consultant, and based on that sketch, they are working to create 2 to 3 options for council to look at and make a decision.
Is there a lot of money tied to that sketching or?
No, not at
Okay.
the moment.
I was wondering if council had the appetite to put that out to the general public and see if there's any local artists that would also like to design something and maybe council or the community could review as a whole.
Okay, thoughts, Councillor Ward?
Yeah, I would like to see it go to an open call perhaps with specifications with regards to designing something for that, maybe not necessarily constructing, because you can probably come up, we have local artists that would be able to design, but perhaps not construct. And then I would like to see it, some options come forward, and then maybe we put that back to the community to vote on.
Other comments, questions, Councillor Hughes?
I think that's a great idea, and it's a fun way to get the community involved. So I would definitely like to see us do that.
Okay, I guess you need a motion. Joanna, did you capture my motion there when I made a suggestion?
So essentially, we'd want a motion that we task administration to reach out to local designers for options for, sorry, Councillor Adams.
Thinking the public call in general, not
Yeah.
necessarily.
I mean, you could arguably have a 8-year-old student
Yeah.
design something like more of a community contest that I was thinking, or we could try to find local artists if that's the appetite. I just,
School could even do it,
yeah.
Okay, so we make a motion that we task administration to do a request for design, RFD, for our downtown pieces. And that once those are shortlisted, that a public engagement process begins.
Exactly what I meant.
That's what I thought. Councillor Gramick has a motion on the floor. Further discussion?
Just it'd be nice to see some communication about this goal, just so it's not put on the Alberta Purchasing Connection only, and then that's it. Or I just like to see it put on our social media channels and whatnot as well.
And say that we're trying to engage the community.
Yeah, so, I'll be honest here, we're having an open discussion there that, it was definitely, I talked about it previously last week, that our rollout of our logo could have been better explained and could have been better, included some more input from the public. And so I think this is a great opportunity to recognize that fault and put a little action out there. Yeah, and so I look forward to the public being engaged in it. And so then we just need to make sure that there's a process there that we can consider all those designs. I think it should also be included there that, as we move forward, one of the things that we haven't done a good job on as council is communicating some of the things that we're doing and some of the decisions and how we make. And so, that's a lot of the, the vlogs in the past, so that's been a tool that we've been using that, I take full responsibility that I haven't used a ton lately. And so that's something that we need to get back into. So we'll figure out that behind the scenes about how we get that done.
Little more discussion. Kush, what was your timeline on that? How quick of a turnaround were you hoping to get?
For the art,
Yeah,
I was thinking like have it installed before end of October.
okay.
Realistically, with this process, we're not going to get it in until spring.
No,
Oh.
no.
I don't think that that's going to hurt us in any way. Councillor Ward.
I was just gonna say, I don't think there's any issue in extending this progress. I would rather, yeah, like Steve just said, I would rather do it right and see what options the community, they have to drive by it every day on Main Street. So let's see what the town has to come up with. And it's kind of exciting to see what they think would represent our town.
Okay. Sorry, we'll move into the next one.
Next one is Firehall High Speed Internet. TELUS completed the installation and splicing of the fiber.
Sorry, yeah, you know what? We threw out the motion, we didn't vote on it. So motion is on the floor. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Sorry, Chris, keep going.
That's okay. So next is Firehall High Speed Internet line. TELUS completed the installation and splicing of fiber line. They just need to complete a final tie-in to the device, and it's currently scheduled for 21st of September. Sawrey's Creek North Main replacement project is already substantially complete. We completed almost $12,000 under the allotted budget. It is currently in the warranty stage right now. Drainage system upgrade. We completed the installation of concrete swale in the ditch there, anticipating that it will take a lot of flow from the surface and push it away from the road, making it better drivable. Also we have ordered 2 inline check wells for the storm gates behind the hospital. However, there is a longer lead times on the delivery of the material. So we're just waiting for the delivery of those materials. SCADA upgrades, majority of the project is complete except PLC upgrade and tie-in. Material for PLC is back ordered since last 6 months. So we don't have a really good estimation on when it will be completed, but we are hoping that this be done before the end of October. Lift station D replacement, we completed channel migration study, and then based on the finding, the land acquisition process was progressing, but it will be further deferred for additional few years due to some other challenges. The land that we are interested in, they are undertaking some remediation efforts that they have on their land. So it's going to take them 2 to 3 years for land to be able to sell to the town.
Because they're in remediation right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we will develop a risk management plan on how to keep operating that existing structure for additional 2 to 3 years, or we can look at another scenario on finding a potential another location and then diverting our flow to the another location.
Okay.
Ammonia ventilation project is all complete per the original scope. It was completed way under budget because the installation of additional HVAC stack and the tie-in to the BMS system was pretty cheap than what we anticipated. 3rd Street Southwest contractor has already installed 70% of the line, water line, and they are planning to complete the extension under the CN tracks by end of this month, and they are hoping to complete concrete work along all the properties and also to cap the trench with temporary asphalt before the end of October. Sidewalk rehab, the RFP closed on July 12th. Contract was awarded on 14th of July, but the work has still not begun and they're expecting to start this mid-September. Bulk sewer dumping station grinder, the pump enclosure is ready.
Sorry, Kush, who got the contract?
For concrete?
For concrete, for the sidewalk rebuild.
It's Pavit. It was Pavit and Ruel Concrete were the only bid that we got, and Pavit was cheaper.
Okay.
Bulk sewer dumping station grinder, the pump enclosure is ready. Grinder pump hardware has been shipped to us, and we are hoping to complete installation probably by the end of next week. Wastewater effluent reports. So we drafted, with the help of Associated Engineering, we drafted those technical reports for Alberta Environment. It was submitted to them for review on June 1st this year. However, Alberta Environment came back asking us to continue sampling of the wastewater until the end of next summer so that we can include more conclusive data in the report. Hilda Ibn Park upgrades, work allotted for the tennis court upgrade is expected to be completed. The contractor said initially by the end of September, but if they're not able to get it, then they will try to prioritize it for spring next year. However, and also there is additional scope to replace all the bollards along the parking lot there with a 4-foot high chain link fence, which is expected to be completed once the splash pad installation is complete this year. New splash pad services like water, sewer, and power installation work is all complete. Contractor is hoping to mobilize tomorrow and start working on the splash pad. Water treatment plant filter integration with SCADA, installation and programming of actuators is all complete as per the project scope. The project completed just $4,000 over budget because we had to pay extra cost for programming as Alberta Environment and Park required some of the units that was mentioned on the SCADA changed. Like we had some units on manual, but they needed on automatic. So we had to do extra programming efforts in order to fix that. Water treatment plant office reconstruction. We completed hazardous material assessment and we found that there is asbestos in the external walls of the administration space at the treatment plant. So now we are just working to revise our scope and our next step would be to prepare the tender documents.
So in the exterior walls themselves?
Yes,
In a block.
cinder blocks, basically.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Last one is EV charger. So hardware has been received. We are working with ATCO Electric to determine another tying point to save significant on transmission and distribution charges. So if we tie the EV charger to our office panel, then we are looking at additional charges in the range of $1,800 a month, which are alone transmission and distribution. Power charges is really minimal. It's only like $150. But we are paying like $1,800 for distribution and transmission.
so that's if we tie into the building. So basically we take power from the building to the charging station.
Yeah.
But what are other options?
Other option is ATCO can find a nearby transformer and then we can pull a line from the transformer to the EV charger.
And have it its own separate meter and that's cheaper?
Yes, that's cheaper.
Interesting. Okay,
That's about it.
okay. Motion to accept his information. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Thanks,
Thank you.
Kush. Okay, Calvin, you ready to blow our minds here?
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The purpose of the report is to provide council for consideration and an alternative snow removal service program proposed as a pilot project for 2022 and 2023. The background, the snow removal is always a hot topic. The primary goal of the snow removal snow blower pilot program is to minimize economic loss to the community, reduce the inconvenience and hazards of winter dry conditions for motorists and pedestrians, and to facilitate the operation of emergency services. In prep for the winter, the CAO and myself have conducted a review with the current resources, processes and challenges to the snow removal as previous. The challenges have been the foundation of the creation of the snow pilot program. It's important to know that the snow removal program or the traditional snow removal is affected by severity of snow levels, temperature fluctuations, garbage collection schedule, homeowners are depositing snow on the streets or in ditches, ongoing traffic, parked vehicles on the street. The discussion, the pilot program consists of a change in the current snow removal program. Our current snow removal program consists of roads being cleared on a priority basis. The snow is primarily stockpiled on the side of the road, alternating in a residential area from one side to the other. And the snow is basically graded up onto the sidewalks and people's front lawns left for the winter. Operations is proposing and implementation of a pilot program for half of the town to allow the thorough evaluation at the end of the season. And it'll consist of cost, efficiency, and resident satisfaction. The pilot program, the west part of town will continue as regular. The east part of town it'll have the snow blower pilot program. Signage will be posted in each quadrant to let the residents know. Priority 1 and priority 2, that's your emergencies and your mains, will be just as usual, and that's for the emergency transportation. Priority 3 will have windrows to the curb. We won't be piling it up onto the sidewalks or stuff like that. We'll be storing it along the curbs until the snow blowing process is started for residential. Priority 4, when the significant amount of accumulated builds up of resident of the snow, the pilot program will be initiated. The roads will be monitored and the snow blower pilot program will be initiated when we reach a hard pack of roughly 4 to 5 inches, or it becomes difficult for traffic to get around. The program should take about 3 days. We'll know once we get into it and see. We're planning on staying ahead of the garbage schedule. Sidewalk clearing, as per our bylaw, number 32-217 states that no person shall deposit snow, ice, dirt, debris on the sidewalks or roadways. As a result of the pilot program, the town will not be putting snow on lawns or front sidewalks in the northeast and southeast quadrants. So the residents will be required to shovel their sidewalks. The downtown core will remain the same as cul-de-sacs. It'll be hauled out. The only exception is we'll be using snow blowers instead of loaders to make things a little quicker. And like I said, garbage day, we're going to try and do it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to stay ahead of the garbage day. Hopefully we'll stay ahead by 1 day and stay ahead of the garbage. The benefit, snow on the northeast and southeast quadrants will no longer be stored on residential lawns or sidewalks on windrows. Lawns will not accumulate any dirt, debris, or gravel or anything like that. And hopefully will stop some damage on front lawns. Snow will be removed from residential areas in more frequent basis, reducing the impacts of hazards associated with the snow stored on windrows. And last but not least, operations may see a decrease in operating costs with maintaining the front lawns and sweeping in the spring and stuff like that. Resource impact, the department consists of 2 loaders, 2 graders, 1 skid steer, 1 backhoe, and 1 plow sanding truck, and some personnel, of course. Private companies are assisted with the downtown cleanup and maybe looking to get them for this pilot program. So the first table we have there is the startup cost. So this would be a one-time cost. Snow blower rental for a season is $34,500. Attachment hooks, we've got to do some modifications to our loader. So that'll be $4,500, and installation of controls, $2,500. And signage, additional signage, and this is just a rough estimate, about $3,000. So it'll be about a total of $44,500. And then for the event, we'll need about 10 trucks to keep up with a snow blower. And this is cost per an 8-hour day is about $10,720. We'll need a dozer out of the lagoons to keep up with the snow coming into the lagoons for about $2,464 for an 8-hour day. And if we have to rent some graders, a couple of graders will cost us about $3,000 a day. So the total one-day event will be about $16,208. One event, approximately 3 days, will be about $48,624, sorry. And we're planning on doing that about 4 times a season. So for a total of $194,496. Our current budget is $55,000, and that's for snow removal in downtown and cul-de-sacs. The pilot program will be an increase to the service level. Excuse me. Policy implications, policy alteration. If the pilot program is successful, council decides to continue with this process, administration will be required to bring forward changes to the applicable bylaw and policy. For communications, we'll be pumping that out on social media, Facebook, Voyant. As well, we're going to have our big information sign up on Main Street pretty much all the time. And then we'll be putting signage up in the quadrants 48 hours in advance. What we think we're going to do is because we'll be starting it on a Monday, so we'll put the signage out Friday. So it'll give people ample time to move their vehicles. And then we'll ask the bylaw to help us out to contact the owners of the vehicles left behind. Program review, administration will establish a project on this newly acquired engagement HQ to solicit feedback throughout the program and upon completion. And then once we get the feedback, we'll be able to and observations from the operation department and final costing of the program and present to council with recommendations. So the recommendation to council, administration recommends to council the snow blower pilot program be approved for the 2022-2023 winter season as presented.
Okay, let's get into some discussion here. First, sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to provide a little more clarification on a couple of the points there. So under the budget or proposed budget there, a couple of things to keep in mind. The one-time budgets, I think costs are accurate. The snow clearing event charges are just an estimation, and they're an estimation at this stage because what the plan would be going forward is to essentially do a request for quote to the community in terms of the equipment that we need to rent to assist with. So the dollar amounts that are listed on here are kind of high-end estimates, but essentially what we'd be looking for is doing a call letter to out looking for quotes from contractors that have trucks to assist with the snow removal process. So the rates that they're receiving, based on what I've seen elsewhere, I think will be substantially less than what, let's say, the 134 that's quoted here. But that process hasn't happened yet, nor would we necessarily go down that road until the pilot project's engaged. So the estimation for the event, the costs as it relate to on a per day event are on the high end, but I anticipate they'll be on the low end or lower than what you see presented before you. Two, so that would include the truck rentals and a dozer rental. The second thing is that we're estimating 3 days, but there is a high likelihood that it could be done in a lot less time than 3 days, which would impact the total cost or the estimated cost per clearing event. So again, we estimated high. But once we've kind of gone through this process once and we've seen how long it actually takes, and if all the contractors are lined up and that process is smooth, we might be able to get through clearing of these residential areas or these 2 residential areas in half the time, which would be half the cost for potential for a clearing event. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify those points.
Okay, Councillor Brandel.
Couple questions, Cal. So the snow blower rental, is that an actual piece of equipment or is that an attachment that goes onto our existing equipment?
It's an attachment that will attach onto the front end of our loader. So we'll have to do a little modification to our loader. Takes a little bit different hookup and we'll have to install controls into it.
Okay, so.
Very similar to what the airport has.
Yeah.
And it's a person.
Oh, yeah, okay. So renting, say the community loves it and it's a great success and we're going to do it throughout the whole town instead of just partial town next year. Are we still going to rent it or are we going to buy it?
No, we'd end up buying one.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. What's our capacity this year going into the snow season for employees?
We're down 2 guys. We're just putting out an offer letter for 1, so we're just down 1. So we're still advertising.
Okay, so you're working on hiring, okay. And then the estimations, Jeff, are these for the whole town or just the pilot program?
For the pilot project.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
So what they don't share is, under the pilot project, you're doing less grading on a regular basis. You're actually doing no grading on a regular basis through the residential area. So we're saving on the cost and the time that we would have been spending. And then the snow clearing event's kind of an all-in sort of event, right? So you just see the costs relating to the actual snow clearing event, but what we don't have tracked here yet necessarily is what the cost savings are to offset those expenses.
okay. And one last one, for communication. I cannot stress enough that this has to go out, that it is a pilot program and that we're only doing part of the town. And I think we need to continue doing that throughout the winter, not just in the fall and say that we called it good. I think we need to continue communication, please.
Okay, Councillor Gramlich.
Is there an opportunity to also use the airports at the same time to double do it? Or is that not a thing to have 2 of these going at the same time?
Well, the problem is at the airport, we're required on a priority basis, right? So for us to be able to plan, when we decide or clear a snow clearing event, we're doing it within roughly 48 hours roughly, or at least maybe a little bit outside of that window. And to be able to that from the airport and basically not make it available for those 3 days, they have some concerns as it relates to airport safety and maintaining the airport. So,
Okay, and even like not just for those full 3 days, but during that time, if they're, steal it for 6 hours one day, try to get this done quicker, is that just crazy?
to have 2 running at the same time. Well, I wouldn't say it's crazy, but the problem becomes is that the snow blower can keep up. Then you start to have how many trucks are you using to continue to
So
fill.
it might not
So
save us money or anything anyway.
you would almost have to double. If you were running the snow blower in 2 different areas, you'd have to almost double the amount of contracted trucks to keep up. Because the goal is to keep the snow blower going and the trucks lined up. So as one's filling up, the other one's already on his way to dump off at the lagoon, and then they're lining up and queuing up so that the snow blower is continually moving with the truck next to him.
So how many trucks do you need to do that?
But we're estimating 10 typically on a short haul. 10 would probably keep us fully going.
And Cal, you kind of have, these are the same guys that would always be doing that, right? That we've used in the past, the trucks, right? Was it be advantageous to reach out to any of them and see if they wanted to do the snow blower rental or purchase one and throw this on them? Is that something that Edmonds might have looked at or could look at to save us money and put it on to somebody else?
We haven't really thought about that.
How will it save us money?
Well, you're just renting it off them, so you're paying them per use, right? So especially for the pilot, they're gonna rent this and hope that they can earn a profit. Or then if it goes to the point of purchase, well, maybe there's a business model in it and it saves us money. Just a thought, like cross it off the list before we write it off type thing.
I mean, it's something we can explore, but typically if we're renting something, there's going to be a markup on it typically anyway. So I don't think you're going to get that same service and the flexibility to call it when you need it.
Okay.
By renting it outside. They're not going to be able to provide it to us cheaper than what we're renting right from the manufacturer. So
Gotcha.
Okay, Councillor Ward, you had one, and then Councillor Adams.
I was just gonna say, so the, because we're gonna end up comparing numbers, because there is a couple motions presented here. One is to do it half, one is to do the whole community this year. Is it the same kilometer of roads on each side of town, so that when we have comparisons between the two, like what's the theory besides not going all in on the whole town
the
this
type,
year?
basically to be able to have something that we can compare with similar sorts of neighborhoods and similar sorts of amounts of industrial or commercial areas. I mean, so we can have as much of as close to an apples to apples sort of comparison as possible. We could do the other proposition as we flip the switch and do it for the entire community, but then it's it will be difficult come post this season to, other than from a service level perspective and a total cost, to be able to tell you necessarily where the cost savings were or not, or comparison might be difficult because we haven't really tracked it.
And you have
For that
different snow,
purpose
and you have
prior
different
to-
snow levels per year. so-
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're open to either suggestion, but this way maybe gives you a little bit more of an ability to see one system compared to the other.
Hey, Counselor Adams.
My comment was more in line with what Councillor Gramlich was saying. It's not so much on the savings that I was thinking, it's more on the capacity of us to be able to handle it if we're able to contract it out is where I see the advantage. But I mean, if you guys are fine with what it is, I guess that's there too, then we can save the money. But the other thing I would question, not necessarily maybe bad choice of words, but are we also identifying spots where we don't necessarily need to truck this out? I know we have large areas where we have open fields where we're going to be clearing that we can discharge snow into those areas as opposed to trucking it out. Is that an advantage or would that just be a waste?
Well, typically your snow removal is restricted because it contains containments and it contains dirt, sand, it contains salt. We can't just necessarily dump it in an open area or an open field that snow that's removed needs to go to a lagoon, other than stuff stored on site or in sea.
Well, I'm just, one at the top of my head would be in downtown where we pile the snow all along the E.G. Wallstrom fence in there. We've done it for eternity that we pile snow there in big mounds. So if we were to discharge the snow for that 6 blocks or 2 blocks in there, with that, things like that, would that be an advantage?
Well, typically we have right up to property line is classified as a snow reservoir. So that is, it gives us the right to pile snow in windrows and stuff like that. But once we start hauling it out, like Jeff said, it's considered contamination. So we have to take it to the lagoons.
I'm not meaning to dump a dump trailer onto these. I'm meaning discharge the snow from the snow blower in that block downhill to even down the other side on the reserve, down on in front of E.G. Wallstrom where we would be.
Instead of
putting
going in a
windrows
truck,
up.
just basically
Yeah.
blow it over there.
Would that save on trucking? Would that save on time? Would,
It might save on a little bit. It might save on a little bit if it was, depending on how far, where we were discharging and how far it was going, but the trucks and everything are gonna be lined up waiting for the snow blower to go, so it might save an hour, maybe, I don't know. I guess, well, some of those things are gonna work themselves out as we go through this process. Obviously, we're not gonna haul it away if we don't need to, but the whole idea is to have an alternative to the windrow system that was being done and the amount of times we're throwing a grader down a residential street.
Okay,
one last one.
okay.
Oh, no, Kim, go. You've
No,
been
it's
waiting.
okay,
Sorry,
go
I didn't
ahead.
realize you were.
We can come back. You don't have to do them all. but-
My question was just, so we're trying this pilot program on the east side of town. At what point this year would we consider, like, let's say we have 1 or 2 events and they're a success? Would we implement the entire town at a certain point, or where do we stand on, like, let's say it's going well and the other area of town wants that as well? Where would we lie with that?
So there would be no reason why we couldn't switch. It more than likely though would require a budget amendment because this is a service level increase.
Yeah.
The premise of this program is it's heavily relied on contractors. So the concerns about our own personnel are actually kind of minimal. You know, we would operate the snow blower. There may be an operator that's required as a back, in a skid steer that basically follows in behind the snow blower and is scraping up whatever's left. The trucks are all contracted out. And we don't even necessarily need to, we could potentially use our graders if they're not busy on the west side. Or we could contract out the graders, right? And completely most of this whole snow removal process is contracted other than a couple staff and someone directing. So
Right.
there's a potential that's essentially how it would work. But yeah, we could flip the switch halfway through if we like what we see. It just would require
More money.
Yeah.
money.
So if that is the case, you'll come back to council and we could have the opportunity to implement it for the whole town.
Absolutely.
That
Yeah.
works.
Or you could request it early, us to come back if you find that that's the case.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Ferguson.
Were we, I may have missed it, but was there a plan to do the industrial area too, or would that just be getting plowed off into the ditches as normal?
No, industrial area will be conventional plowing into the,
Okay.
off the side of the road and stuff into the ditches and stuff.
Okay, and then my other question is, so obviously this comes at, a sizable cost. Was there any consideration given to just segregating it to one quadrant rather than half of the town? That way we could still have the results we want, but that way if it doesn't give us the results that we wanted, we're not out as much money.
Essentially, there's nothing that's going to be other than the snow blower contract itself, which you're going to incur that cost regardless of the fact. If after the first instance, there was a change in plan that we didn't like how it was going at all, we could revert back to our normal sort of course or sort of operations, but the sunk cost would be those one-time fees would be, there's no going back on once we rent it for the season and hook it up essentially and everything else. So.
Okay. Councilor Grammett.
Steve, did you get your?
He's good.
You're good. Okay, just these trucks taking it away is a decent cost. Has it been looked into a snow melter? Have you guys heard of those?
No.
Yeah.
I have heard of them. The only hurdle with that is our storm drains are only about 3 feet deep. So they melt them and put them into the storm drains. And what it'll do is it'll freeze up our storm drains drastically. And then we're in a lot of trouble in the springtime.
Okay, just an idea.
If we had, yes, no, I have actually heard of them. If we had deeper storms, like 8 feet plus, then it would be a really good option, but.
Thank you.
Do other communities have deeper storm drains than us normally? Like I'm just,
The cities do typically.
Okay.
A lot of smaller towns are shallow.
okay.
The storms are fairly shallow. All depends on the drainage around the area and stuff like that, so.
Okay. I have some questions and comments.
There's some questions left.
Oh, yeah. So first off, I will say to administration, I appreciate the idea of this and bringing forward this opportunity for us. And I will say that our public would love for us to try something like this. But I'm a logistics guy, right? You guys heard that before? Never. So my understanding is that we're gonna do normally what we're going to do in the southwest and northwest. We're gonna plow it out. In the other areas, we're not gonna do anything, right? We're gonna let it hard pack. So we're gonna let these people drive there and they're gonna pack it on their own. So if there's a foot of snow, we're just gonna wait till they pack it in enough that it goes.
In the residential areas.
In the residential areas, right? So they're gonna have to navigate that until it gets hard packed enough. And now the scenario is that we're gonna have to try and then go snow blow once it gets hard packed enough, because that's what we're waiting for. And although Mother Nature goes above zero like 5 times last winter, and it all turns into mush, we're basically gonna keep it going until they can barely drive through it, and then we're gonna go snow blow. Agreed? Okay.
In a nutshell, yeah.
Okay, and to do that, it's going to cost us a worst case scenario, $200,000 a year to do that for half the town. So technically up to $400,000 a year to do the entire town. So we're talking worst case scenario, we're looking at a 4% tax increase to do all of town next year if we're gonna do this. And at least a 2% tax increase to do it for this year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and additionally, this whole plan depends on us finding 10 trucks to be able to keep up to doing this when we need to go do it. But like last year, we had issues getting graders to help us when we were busy because they were all busy with their own snow removal when we're doing snow removal. So in my head, it comes down to the fact that do residents want to pay more for increased snow removal? I think some do, and I think some don't want to pay any more in taxes at all. Logistically, do I think we can pull it off? If we all own this equipment and we actually had control over it, I'd feel a little bit safer than we're relying on contractors that are already busy. Like, I don't know which business out there right now is saying, hey, I have a whole bunch of people sitting around waiting for people to call here. Like we have too much staff and away we go. And so that concerns me. It concerns me about our ability to pay off. The reason that people want us to do the snow blower option and remove snow is because they don't like that windrow in front of their yard. And I totally agree with that 100%. But I also think that their priority is to get from point A to point B. And I just think in this scenario, we're going to make it harder for them to get to point A and point B to make it nicer for them in the spring. So like even when this is hard packed, we talked about doing some windrows to the sides, but not all the way up. And then you kind of bring it back again. So in that, how does people park on the street?
Well, yeah, places that we do take the windrow,
They're
if we
gonna
don't
be-
take it
it's
up on
gonna
the
be narrow.
sidewalk, they won't be able to park on the street on there.
Right?
That's the priority threes, so not the residential.
So although I love the ingenuity, I love the idea of doing it physically, A, I don't think it's something that people want to pay this much for. And B, logistically, I think we're going to tick off more people to accomplish it. Now, I do live in the Southwest, so facetiously, I think I'll get better snow removal if we try this project for a year. But I will tell you, thinking from the logistics of the entire town about what the taxpayers want, love the idea, love the options, understand the costs, but I wouldn't be in favor of it. Councillor Graham.
Jeff, did you do this in your previous employment?
We did.
And can you give me like all the pros or cons? Can you lay it on the line a bit for us and if it worked?
Short version, it worked. You know, there was, it was a northern community north of here. So this was the strategy that was deployed within the residential areas. It had a mix of curb and gutter residential and country residential, which, you know, would be your ditches and culverts sort of idea. So the ditches sort of residential, traditionally the snow was just plowed off and stored in those areas. But the curb and gutter was exactly as the program is described here. There was no concern in that community of about 2,500 people roughly. There was companies fighting for that ability to supply trucks. There was a number of construction companies, gravel companies that basically weren't hauling gravel during the winter, that had idle people, and they were just looking for, you know, they might have had some of their drivers might have been semi-retired or just using occasionally. So they were kind of counting on these sort of 2 or 3 snow clearing event days to kind of throw a little bit of work to some of their employees. So there was no issue with securing contractors in that community. In fact, we were fighting to figure out which 10 we actually were using.
I think of similar results here with the pay.
Right. The municipality owned the snow blower in that case. And so, I mean, it took some coordination. That's sometimes is the challenge to it is lining everybody up, and depending on who, you know, where those contractors are, I would suggest if we're doing a request for quotes, we basically stipulate the equipment that we're looking, they submit the best price, we priority rank them, and that's how we start to fill those holes.
Was this something you had done in your full tenure there, or did it switch over from the?
It was done prior to me, and it was continues to be done.
And it switched in the not so distant past, and no one wanted to switch back. There was no one saying, please come grade my road.
There was no one that was saying that they wanted windrows or anything along those lines.
Well, that's how it had been done traditionally for a long time.
That's right. Well, that's your alternative is the process that you have. So we kind of heard over the last, since I've been in this chair, that we were looking for an alternative to snow removal. And so this is essentially what we're bringing.
Yeah, I really like it. I know I think I had brought this up at one point. I know Bryce had brought this up over some time over our last 5 years, and it never really got any legs. So I heard what the mayor had to say, but I really want to try this out and see if it works.
Does that mean you're ready to make a motion?
I think.
Well, and you know, to the mayor's comments, yes, it's a lot of money. And it's a lot of money for a test. Myself, I'd still like to see a scaled down version, and maybe we can do the Northeast. It should still just give us the idea of whether it works or not. Yet we're not committing almost $200,000 to it.
So what I could suggest then is, as the snow season will start before the end of this budget year, we will undoubtedly have at least one snow clearing event that will happen under this budget year that we could bring back to council with an update as to A, how much time it's taking, and B, a more accurate reflection of the cost. Because like I said at the beginning, the estimations for equipment rentals are just estimations based essentially on the Alberta Road Builders Guide. And it's a high level estimation. So if there is significant concern as to the amount of time that is taking and the cost, for future budget consideration for the 2023 budget, which is upcoming, we could definitely have at least one clearing event happen and bring back those costs for reconsideration.
Is there like a manufacturer or someone out there who wants to rent us this or wants us to purchase that we could rent for one snowfall or a weekend to say like, hey, we're really interested, but some people are on council aren't as progressive as others, so we can't jump right into it. So can we just try it for one snowfall or something?
We can inquire. The vendor that we're renting from is the one that is ideally at the end of the day would be the supplier for a sale. I don't know if they had given us that option, but we can see if they can let us test drive it for one event and see.
Counselor Ward?
Yeah, I would inquire with the vendor, but also I know that we are concerned about not using this. There was talk about the airport has this machinery and that for a whole season, multiple events, half the town, that would be impractical because there is priority given for obviously the runway at the airport. But if we're talking about a trial for a quarter or half of a town for one event, there might be a deal to be made there. I'm just throwing out options because I think there was,
Yeah, we could.
it
talk
had been
to
mentioned
Pierre.
before to borrow it. So maybe we can borrow it for one event and see,
Mhm.
we still have to rent the trucks, but see if this one-time rental we can avoid.
Yeah, we could talk to Pierre and see if he'd be up for that. The only thing I could think of is if we did decide to go with an all year, we probably wouldn't be able to secure the snow blower for the rental. They're basically asking us to make a
He's
decision
booking
fairly
now.
quick. So if we wanted to try something like that for this year, just go with a one-time event and try it and borrow the airport's one, and then maybe look into renting or buying for next year. That's an option too.
Counselor Adams?
I know speaking with Pierre in the past, he had suggested about this trial idea for us to do it. The reasoning their priority is as soon as it snows, which we don't even react to in the residential areas. So as long as in the forecast, we're not seeing an immediate snowfall, which we typically wouldn't start snow plowing in the middle of a storm, they don't use their snow blower. So to
Yeah,
have
we
the
could schedule it.
conflict there
We could schedule it in between.
is what I'm thinking, right? Their priority is immediate, not when we would normally want to use it, right?
Counselor Hughes?
Wasn't sure if I was gonna actually talk again. Will one event be enough information to give you what you need, was my thought.
One event will give you an estimation on an event cost. Is that going to be
And how
enough to
easy it is
solicit
to-
public feedback as to, is this an effective snow removal program for the year? Is this the right strategy? I don't know.
My prediction is it'll only take one event.
For us to say no.
Well, I just don't, I think logistically, it's going to be hard to pull off. And I think then is it worth a 2% tax increase? Well, 4% to the whole town.
Maybe not, because there could be cost savings from the other ones.
You have to max this out. This is the extreme.
Yeah, this is a high estimation.
There's,
And we've also budgeted 55,000 for contract services.
there's gonna be no cost savings. Like literally, like how can you get cost savings? We budget to do contract work. All this money is based on contract work. And theoretically, the only savings we would be is if we had a guy stay home that day and we didn't pay him, which isn't gonna happen. We'll just have him do something else. There's not gonna be any savings.
I think that snow removal and clearing is always going to be a challenge for us, but when was the last time we ever tried something different, right? That's kind of my thought. Residents, and even ourselves, like no one is ever completely happy with it. And it's so dependent on the situation and how much snow we get and all of those things. But I think that I would be open to trying something different if we can. And let's see what other options we can provide for the community.
So it sounds like the majority of you are ready to make a motion.
Sure.
Well, I just more discussion. Does council have the appetite to make these motions, or do they like Bryce's suggestion? And then we all started spitballing other ideas, but Bryce doesn't have the worst idea out of all the ideas to downsize this and minimalize some of these costs, and we could always expand it. This is the Rockstar way and it's going great. Well, hey, guess what, Southeast, you're getting it next. Like we could always add on, but it's really hard to take away. So we could start small and build up. Bryce's idea was pretty good. If council likes that way rather than as written, there's a bit of cost savings.
I think the idea of the only doing one quarter also makes sense to start, and then if it's a wonderful success, then you could start expanding from there. If the company's asking for a commitment on the snow blower for the season, well, then we would have it. We can commit to a full season, at least for the quarter, and then take a look at the rest of it.
Councillor Adams.
Another piece to add on to the single quadrant though, is if we're gonna go down this road, I would like to see it utilized on the main arteries. Does it make sense for that? The sixths in the main?
Sorry?
On Sixth Ave.
Sixth Avenues and the Main Street.
Yeah, so it will be used, it'll be used as for the snow removal on the main
And
as
even if
opposed
we
to.
do decide to go to a one quadrant test, I would still like to see the arterials be covered as part of the test. 'Cause I
So
think those are main.
we have a suggestion to do by administration, do half the town. We have a suggestion by one of the councillors to do only one quadrant. And we have a suggestion by another councillor to do one quadrant and all the arterials in Main Street.
So Sixth Main Street.
With the airports?
No, I think it'd be the,
No, so like,
The
so Main
rental.
Street and all the arterials, we'll stop grading those and we're just gonna wait for the snowpack to go on those ones before we do the snow.
Well, main and the
Okay.
arterials are gonna have to get done more often. Hey, Giggler, bye.
I mean,
Just literally, the biggest reason I think that you're gonna have is you're gonna have public outcry that they're gonna crucify you for not cleaner in the snow. Like, I think that that's going to be the biggest option with this, and all of a sudden we have to panic, we go do it. If we don't have the contractors, we're screwed. So, you know, those are the two things I'm worried about. So now you're gonna go on the ones that they travel the most, that you're gonna get the most feedback.
So what, the ones that are traveled most will have the least amount of trouble, because it's gonna be packed down quickly. It's gonna be some side residential street that's complaining, right? Where it's like, I couldn't get my,
That's the one where you get the most feedback, because everyone's gonna be like, don't these guys clear snow anymore, or what's the deal?
well, the public perception is we don't clear snow anymore.
the collectors are still going to be plowed as normal. It says right in the report, so.
Well, that's what the report says, but
No,
that's
I was
not what,
asking about.
that's not
using
what
those
some
as
of
the
council's
snow
talking
removal.
about. That's the importance
We've
of throwing out a
got the
motion to
wide
debate.
roads, we've got no parking, and you can them to the center and you just clear them. It seems to me, snow, as far as snow blowing goes, those are the easiest ones to do and will have the biggest impact over
Okay, but-
any residential.
But to be clear, you're talking about something else. You're talking about plow it to the center and then clear it, but they would not plow until it's all packed. We're all in the
Look at
same.
what we are last year when we're doing our plowing, I was high centering constantly through the intersection.
If you
You
look at
can't tell me
your,
that I have less than 5 inches of clearance on my freaking vehicle. There's no way.
if you look at the collector on priority 3 under the proposed plan there, so they will have windrows to the curb until snow blowing operations are scheduled for the rest of residential. And at that time, essentially, they'll be pulled into the middle and removed. So collectors will be, so snow will be removed. It'll be plowed in windroad for the time being until the snow clearing event happens. So you'll be able to travel the collectors as you do any other time, except we're gonna pull the snow out with the snow blower once we're doing a residential, the cleanup.
which would improve the walkability of the collectors, because yes, they're
Absolutely.
plowing, but then that's a lot of
And
snow that
safety
ends
to
up there.
smells.
Yeah, so right now,
Easier for kids crossing the street with the big windrows in the way, stuff like that, because that's where your sixths is where a lot of foot traffic is.
Well, if we start rolling it out though to the rest of the arterial roads and community, it's not really a test anymore. I'd still rather see it segregated to one area of the community. So we have a really good idea if it works and it's truly a test for one area.
Realistically, though, you guys could test this after one snowfall. It'll either work or it won't, right? So, you know, I would recommend that if you guys are gonna go down that road, to stick with 2, so you have a better idea, because capacity is going to be the bigger issue. So if you're only doing it on 25%, you're not getting a true understanding of what capacity you actually have to get it done and how long it takes you.
But I disagree with that at the same time, because are you going to clear the entire town at the same 3-day event? You're not going to get a 5-inch pack in the southwest at the same time you get one in the northeast. It won't happen. You can plan this out still quarter by quarter, as opposed to doing the entire town at once. So capacity is what you make it. As long as you can handle one quarter.
I don't understand that. Like, you can't just simply times
So
it all
you
by
have
4.
3 days to clean, say, the southeast, no matter what way you do this. You can't get to the southwest till those 3 days are done. It's not like we have
Yeah.
2 snow blowers as suggested to tackle all.
I agree,
4.
but
Like,
if
no,
we're-
I'm agreeing with you.
Oh.
I'm trying to explain it to him. Like, you can't get to them all. It doesn't matter if you do 1 or all 4. You have to finish 1 before you get to the other 4. We only have 1 snowboard to keep up with. Does that make sense?
It does. I think logistically, the problem is going to be is how much capacity you have to actually do it. And by only looking at 25% of it instead of more of it, I think you're limiting what you're getting a true comparison of what it is. But realistically, it's administration. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, part of this depends on a contractor availability and pricing, right? So that's the next step in this project, is putting out that RFQ, seeing what that interest is. If we don't have a local capacity to man this, we internally within our assets, we don't have enough trucks to run this program ourselves. So if we don't have a contractor component that we can depend upon, and that we have enough operators to operate those trucks, and to assist with any other equipment that we need, then this dies really quickly, and there's really no other option other than to focus on our current operations. But that will be identified well before snow hits the ground.
Okay.
So
So if you only do a quarter though, I would say that you concentrate on the area of town, the quadrant of town that has the most amount of roads and the highest density of people, because it's going to give you the best feedback on whether you're succeeding or failing.
That's agreed upon. Yeah. What is that? The southeast?
Southeast.
Jeff, do you think that, what does admin think? Was 1 good enough to try 1, or do you think we should just go with your guys' recommendation and do this?
well, I think it'll give us a better idea, as to what half the town's going to cost us, A, for time, B, for actual cost and process.
And are we saving that much money by doing 1? Because we're
I
still
don't-
getting the 34 grand at the snow blower.
The
rental.
one-time costs are going to be sunk. Yeah. It's just amount of how long is it going to take? So yeah, you might be saving on the contractor cost, but you're going to be running your graders through the areas that aren't affected more routinely, and then dealing with the problems of the snow left over, the cost that deals up with the cleanup, and any damage. So you're going to offset one, but you're going to incur back on the other side.
Yeah, so it's not that much cost savings.
Does that mean you feel comfortable and you're ready to make a
Yeah, you know
motion?
what? I'll make this motion. If you hate it, you can vote no. I'll make a motion that council approve the 2022-2023 snow blow pilot program as presented to be delivered on a trial basis to half of the town of Slave Lake.
Further discussion on the motion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. Okay, let's jump into the next one. School zone operation signage, Calvin.
Advise council of the options and costs for changing the time zones and corresponding signage in existing schools. On March 15th, 2022, council passed a motion 113-22, tasking administration to bring back a report around the cost of the implication of associated with changing the current school zones from the current times to 8:30 to 4:30. In the discussion, currently the town has established its following time periods that are 8:30 a.m. to 9:30, 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. The town bylaw is established, the times currently follows the provincial guidelines. Other communities take a couple different approaches. They either go with 8 to 4:30, Monday to Friday, or they treat playground zones the same as school zones, combine the two. Of course, because children do play it at school zones and as well as playground zones. There are currently 6 school zones and 8 playground zones. Resource impact, the cost to change all the signs would be about $2,000, and it would have to come from accumulated surplus. That's just for the school zones, come from accumulated surplus or photo radar. If administration decides to change the times, bylaw 16-2019, traffic bylaw will have to be amended to reflect the time zones. Communication, the town will use social media and the website and Facebook and Voyant, and as well as signage. Recommendations to council, the town of Slave Lake Council accept this report as information.
Okay. Quick question, Calvin. Why is the recommendation to accept as information and not proceed?
I believe because it was, you guys just asked to bring back a report specifying the cost.
The council decided we want to do it. Okay. Questions, comments on this? Councilor Brandel.
Context. I'm not sure if your administration can answer this, or Councilor Adams, was this you that brought this to our table? So context, is this coming from the
school division asked us for
it was, okay. And then Cal, do you remember when we changed the signage last time?
Yep.
How many years ago was that?
That was 2017.
17, okay. Because at that time, we were told by the school zone or the school division that, we were the only community in the whole province that haven't done this, and why haven't you done this? We have to do it.
Yep.
Okay. And now, it's another ask. So I just struggle with, like, can we just make our own decisions and stick with it instead of having to change every single time? I don't know. I don't know. I struggle with it.
That's always an option, but then people would wonder how progressive you are.
I'm just on the track where, set it and forget it. And I don't know that I've seen anybody in the community complaining about this. So I don't know that it's really needed. But
Councilor Adams.
I'm on the other side of this. I struggle with us, well, one, being the only one in the entire school division right now that does not adopt this practice of either one, including cities. Calgary's already adopted this. It's the way things are going and where we should go. The safety aspect of it, I think, implies, specifically speaking to let's say Schroeder School, for example, who have little kids that are constantly crossing that street with no sidewalk on the other side. Whenever they're going to the senior centers or walking over to other events, it does make it a challenge having a car able to speed through there at 50 kilometers an hour when it's not on icy roads, when it's not necessarily the safest time. For us to take a school zone and drop it to 30 kilometers all day, I think honestly has minimal impact to residents in those school zones for that particular time. Again, this was brought forward before I was on council and got rejected by council at that time, and it was brought forward again here. And I honestly think we need to address this and adopt it. Having those signs, what we have now with the multiple reading is not safe, because you do take time to read what those times are. You're taking your eyes off the road and actually causes, in my opinion, causes more of a hazard than a benefit. There, my 2 bits.
Councilor Ward and then Councilor Hughes.
I agree with Steve. I know.
I got it written down.
Mark it
We're
down.
recording this for
I
broadcast.
agree with Councillor Adams here. A lot of this comes from personal experience, having lived in Edmonton more than I've lived here. Their signage is all treated as a playground zone the entire time driving into Welliger. It's the same thing. You pass the schools, and it was just there on the weekend. So that's personal experience wise. I also have a small child, and we all know that CJ Schroeder, just because of location, is a problem for kids, and that park is used for more than just the students. Kids are coming over from the daycare. Kids are also walking from CJ Scherter to Hospital Park. So there is a lot of foot traffic on that street. I don't think this is a big ask of residents to slow down during those areas all day. And I think it's a great use of our photo radar funds.
It'll likely generate more.
Yeah, I will echo that and I agree with that. I have heard my own safety concerns from residents as well, especially in the CJ Scherter area. I think it's a good thing. I know I have a young child. I think we should be concerned about our community safety. And if it's coming at a cost of $2,000 to suggest some signage, then big whoop for me. I also think that having the signs and having people go slow all day is great. I'm one of those people, I don't remember the time, so I just slow down to 30 anyways. So I feel like everyone should do that and I'm in support of this.
Calvin,
Can I chime in?
anytime, sir.
I recently went back to Coronation, my hometown. It's about a 6-hour drive. And on that drive, I've drove through quite a few littler communities, same size as us, including Camrose and Balf and Daysland and
Camrose is not smaller than us, bro.
well,
So I hope you had your eyes
including big
open
and
for the whole
small,
drive
sorry.
too. But
But
keep going.
anyways, what I noted that, and I paid attention to the playground zones and the school zones. The playground zones and the school zones are the same in the smaller communities. And the reason for that is the children play at, if we're going to talk about safety, the children play at the school zone, same as they do at a playground. So if we made the playgrounds, the school zones match the playgrounds, really, what's it hurt? That's just my 2 bits.
Okay, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. Like the schools have parks in them themselves, right? So they should be a playground zone until dusk. And the school zone times it doesn't make sense. It's confusing for everybody, especially me, just 30 across the board. I'm like Kim now. I just drive 30 all day through residential. So on top of that, I wanted to wonder if council had an appetite to review our speeds within town, because I think the residential 50 is way too fast. And I think Caribou Trail 50 is way too slow. Like I'd like to get a report on that from administration and see if that's something we could review if everyone's on board with that.
Another thing I did notice, a lot of smaller communities are going to a 40 km/h in town, 40 kilometers an hour. So they're dropping down from 50 to a 40.
Okay,
There's another one.
so does that mean you would like to make a
Well, I'll
motion?
make the first motion. Like I have no problem. I don't want to accept this as information. I'd like to change bylaw number 16-2019 to the different time zones of what are the current playground zone times? Sunrise to sunset to that. Yeah.
Councillor Ferguson.
So in reality, actually, I think what you'll need to do is put a motion for us to bring back a change to the bylaw.
Okay.
Because you'll have to have a formal amendment to the bylaw
Councillor Graham makes a motion to bring back
for administration to
for
bring back,
administration to bring back a
bring
report
back the
to
bylaw.
amend the bylaw to include
To reflect.
considerations for traffic changes, speed changes around the entire community.
This,
Or the play, or the subject matter that's in.
the subject matter at hand, was that under the same bylaw? The community speeds? No, eh?
No, but are you dealing with, which issues are you dealing?
I was dealing with the first issue at hand, this one.
So it's 2 separate bylaws?
They should be included in the same bylaw. Let me just see if we could pull it up.
Well, theoretically, they're gonna bring the bylaw back. So if they're gonna bring the bylaw back and we're gonna change other things in the bylaw, we should make sure we bring that stuff at the same time. Otherwise, we change the bylaw and then we change it again.
Yeah.
And the other issue here is that we're going to make speed signs, but if we're gonna look at all the other things and then we
Yeah.
change these signs and change them again because it doesn't fit everything.
All or none.
Oh, we're not. Okay, there's my guy. Progressive Joe over here. Councillor Ferguson, sorry, wait, no, we need to finish this. What's our motion? It's your motion.
To bring this back to review, I guess, is what we have to do.
Okay, so he wants to bring the bylaw back for review. So bylaw,
Number 16-2019.
to council for review.
Bylaw.
What's that?
It will have a new number when you bring it back
Yeah.
for amendment, so the traffic bylaw.
Is all you need to refer to.
Okay,
The traffic bylaw.
so I'm making a motion to bring back the traffic bylaw. Decision
For review.
or review. Okay.
As discussed.
And that will encompass the other
As
speed.
discussed.
Perfect.
My motion is on the floor. Further discussion.
I'll say that my perspective on this has changed over the years now that I have two kids in school. I would hate the idea of somebody ripping through their school zone when they're in school. That being said, though, the High Prairie School Division, they asked us to do it from the 8 AM to 4:30. I don't know why we'd be looking at doing it all day with the playgrounds. Counselor Gramlich, you talk about how much you hate photo radar. How much is somebody going to hate it when they get a ticket at 10:30 at night in the summer when no kids are in the
High Prairie School
playground zone?
Division asked us to review this.
They asked us to review it to coincide it with, if I recall correctly, from 8 AM to 4 to match it with playgrounds. And we realize in the summertime, the sun comes up, 4 or 5 AM, we're gonna have playground zone in effect from 5 AM to 11 PM. To me, that doesn't make sense.
Okay, so in fairness, though, because this is coming back, we're not deciding today. We can get into further debate on that as it comes.
Yeah, that is correct.
I'll elaborate. I hate photo radar and speed traps. I love photo radar in residential and school zones. I hate it on ring roads and highways.
Okay, what happened to all or nothing?
That was a quote. Joe misquoted me.
Oh, yeah, okay. Sorry, Jeff, did you have something?
No, I was gonna add that, I mean, quite often you'll see in some of these playground or school zones, recreational fields, soccer fields, baseball fields, whatever the case is. As you know, those leagues happen during the summer and they happen after hours, typically after schools, right? So to suggest that those, not even just the playground structures themselves, but organized sporting activities are occurring in these areas well into the evening, that are gonna have kids running back and forth through to and from, whatever the case may be. So from my previous role or my previous job prior to municipal was obviously in law enforcement, and this would be hands down the recommendation I would give communities time over again, is that treat your school zones as playground zones and offer the best level of protection that you can, and moving forward. So
Did you used to work for RCMP?
I used to for a little bit.
Counselor Adams? Okay. I'll just add that I believe in working smart, not hard. And so last time when we changed this to the provincial thing, which I think is more confusing than common sense, wasn't really in favor of it then. So excited that we're looking at something different now. So motions on the floor. And so to be clear here, council wants to entertain the option of changing speed zones throughout their entire community. Correct?
So we could bring the bylaw back that will have the ability to address playground, school zones, and overall speed limit of town.
Okay.
It's the same
It all,
bylaw.
the same bylaws. It's all one.
Same
report and
bylaw,
do
so we
whatever
could
else.
propose the same amendments or whatever the case
Get into
may
further
be.
debate once it's there. We're
And
just
you go through your
expanded scope
process.
and so on and so forth.
Correct.
Motions on the floor. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. 5-minute break? Okay, I got a motion here, head nods for 5-minute break, so let's do that. And we will come back. Okay, let's jump into our next report, engagement HQ, Jordan.
Thanks. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. The purpose of this report is to discuss the implementation of Engagement HQ. The town has been researching ways to support productive engagement and feedback on town projects and initiatives. Community engagement is important and allows for more informed decisions to be made, but the current setup the town has in place is broad and opens opportunity for residents to miss information, as well as relevant feedback to not be sent to the appropriate departments. Engagement HQ will allow important information to be centralized in one location while allowing community feedback and engagement to be commonplace. Engagement HQ will work as a project archive to house town projects and initiatives. This software will be implemented into the town website for ease of use. In addition to sharing of information, the software utilizes 8 engagement tools to help combine online and face-to-face methodologies for feedback and decision-making. The tools fall into 3 categories, which are open environment to allow participant engagement with each other, mixed environment, which allows participants to see other contributions with limited peer-to-peer interaction, and closed environment for anonymous data entry. And some of these include open forums, photo sharing, question and answers that are moderated, and polls and surveys. The projects, results of the engagement tools, and relevant information for projects such as PDFs and policies will be timestamped and publicly available to help support the public process and organizational transparency. Now, the software itself costs about $10,000 a year, which will need to be budgeted for, and staff will need to be trained on the service. And Engagement HQ will be advertised on town communication channels with instructions on use. The program will also be regularly advertised when new projects are added. And we recommend to council that council approves the implementation of Engagement HQ.
Okay, questions, comments? I'll start. First off, appreciate you bringing this report forward. So council had an opportunity to spend some time with the contractor previously and understand what this means. Ideally, what the centers around is the fact that this council is still very passionate about engagement and communication with our residents. And so looking around at a number of our neighbors, this is a low-cost tool that would help us provide some more opportunities for engagement in the future, help keep residents more informed, and make sure that we're not missing things. Right now, we're relying heavily on a social media platform that's not monitored 24/7. And so we're not able to deal with a lot of those things unless they directly come in. This would create a new platform that would create increased engagement between residents and the town of Slave Lake. So I, for one, am excited to see where this can go. Other comments, Councillor Adams and then Councillor Ward.
I mirror what you're saying as far as support of this, looking at the back end and where what you can do with it. I do like the fact that it can be directed. I like the fact that it has accountability built in. The fact we can tie it into our website as well as have a separate platform. I think this overall thing is just going to improve our not only engagement with the community, but also in pushing a message out to the community as well for information. Well, in my opinion, well worth the investment.
Councillor Ward.
I think the public is asking for structured engagement, and when we're looking at our social media, we're not all seeing like monitoring actions and comments across groups, personal pages, town pages. The problem with social media is it's a bit Wild West, and there are too many areas for comments, for questions, for concerns, and honestly, a lot of them get lost. There's a lot of valid comments, questions, feedback out there, but without it being collected together, it's almost impossible for not only staff, but council to monitor. So I like the idea that this would funnel these questions, concerns, ideas, feedback to the correct department, where meaningful change can be impacted. Complaining on Facebook is one thing, but this is where you can actually have an actionable solution so that your concern or your idea is validated and heard. I think it's just a great tool overall.
Okay. Does that mean you want to make a motion?
Make the motion.
Feel free.
I have to find it. Hold on.
Page 41.
Thank you. I'll make a motion that council authorize administration to proceed with the acquisition and implementation of Engagement HQ for the annual cost of 10,000 with funding coming from the technology reserve.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? It's carried. Okay, page 42, tourism analytics.
So the purpose of this report is just to inform council on the final analytics of the Heck Yeah Tourism campaign. So over the summer months, the town, with the assistance of Slave Lake, the town, with the assistance of Insight, I got my words mixed up there, launched a social media tourism campaign using targeted advertisements on Facebook and Instagram. The campaign consisted of 3 different advertisements that were targeting Edmonton, St. Albert, Spruce Grove, and Stony Plain. And the goal of the campaign was to obtain the highest volume of reach while staying within a daily budget of $99. The main points taken away is over the entire campaign, we had 3,161,503 impressions and 704,639 people reached, with the ages of 25 to 44 being the most interested demographic in terms of reach and engagement. And this was all done just at the cost of $7,451.53. Additionally, 41.5% of the visitors at the Vic this summer were from the Edmonton and surrounding area. And this report's just for information.
Okay, questions, comments from council? Councillor Brandel.
Can you just explain the difference between an impression and people reached?
So-
People reach is when it showed up on their feed, right?
So impression includes just the amount of times it showed up on a screen. So that can include the same person seeing it multiple times. It can include somebody just quickly scrolling past it. Whereas a reach is when somebody actively stopped, looked at it, and essentially took it in.
Okay, so did we track the likes and shares or is that trackable?
That one was a bit further in the analytics, I believe. I don't have those numbers in front of me right now, but
Okay,
I
just
think in
curious,
the deeper end of it, that they are there.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson.
So just some comments here and a couple of questions. So the ads were great. I really think they helped to put us on the map. Reaching over 700,000 people is quite impressive. So a couple of questions. Do we have stats on the percent of visitors who were from Edmonton in previous years for comparison's sake?
I would have to talk to Jill about that.
Okay. And secondly, are there any plans for a winter campaign?
I don't think there's anything currently, but there always is that availability. But I do not believe that we have anything in plans as it relates to this or any sort of outstanding contracts to assist with. So there always is the possibility, should that be the desire of council. But currently there's nothing on the books.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hughes.
Councillor Ferguson actually asked the question I was going to ask as well. But for with working with Insight on this, then like that was it, just this one campaign, correct?
That is correct. This is the end of that
Okay.
initiative.
And I'm not much for impressions or people reached either. So they're measuring this as a highly successful campaign based on these numbers?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions, comments, Councillor Adams?
I'd like to make a motion that council accepts this report as information.
Any discussion? All the question, those in favor? That's carried. I'd like to make a subsequent motion. That we task the administration to reach out to our contractor on costs associated with a winter campaign
And bring back to council.
and bring it back to council.
If possible too, it would be nice to see some of the click-through engagement numbers, the metrics on the previous campaign. The difference between somebody just scrolling past it, somebody actually engaging with it and clicking on it as well.
Yeah, we can provide or bring back to a future council or provide directly any analytics that we did, or the full package of analytics that we received.
Yeah, my piece is that like if we're hitting 700,000 people and we're getting a message out there for less than $7,500, to be able to be doing that all year round, I think is well more than it was worth. You know, it's extreme good bang for our buck. Motions on the floor. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? It's carried. Town of Slave Lake policies and procedures. So let's start out with the fact that this is 40 pages worth of stuff. We still have a number of items for closed session and a few more reports. And so, but my feeling is this is largely some housekeeping stuff here as well. Does council feel like this is an item to table or to deal with right away? Table. Table. Okay, I entertain a motion to table this to the next meeting. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Administration rates bylaw, page 74.
Okay, so the purpose of this report is to bring the council proposed changes to the Town of Slave Lake Administrative Rates Bylaw. So on a yearly basis, administration reviews the rates associated with various administrative functions of the town in order to ensure the rates in effect reflect the current cost to deliver these services. Amendments are requested to adjust the rates to reflect the current costs and market pricing. So several rates have been adjusted to reflect the costs associated with each of the administrative items, including the amount of time, labor, costs associated to third parties and market pricing where applicable to remain consistent and fair. Options are Council 1 approves the proposed amendments as presented and proceed with the adoption of the bylaw through the standard bylaw approval process, or 2, Council declines the proposed amendments as presented.
Okay. Discussion. Motion. Councillor Adams.
I'd like to move to give bylaw number 12-2022 administrative rates bylaw first reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? It's carried. Councillor Ferguson.
Move to give bylaw number 12, 2022 administrative rates bylaw second reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? It's carried. Councillor Ward.
Move to give bylaw 1222 administrative rates bylaw unanimous consent to receive third reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Councillor Hughes.
Move to give bylaw number 12-2022 administrative rates bylaw third reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? It's carried. Okay. So budgetary cost breakdown for homeless coalition site. So Kush is going to come here. Please make a note that Councillor Gramlich is stepping out for this discussion. And I do want to add some preamble. So first off, I will say that, is very, over the last number of years, there's been some groups there that have been taking the time and some passionate volunteers to do their best to deal with the immediate effects of a MAP program during the winter months with a sole goal of keeping people alive when Mother Nature is pushing against that objective. The Friendship Center had done that for a number of years, and last year the Homeless Coalition stepped up to go and do that. But one issue that has remained throughout all of the years of them doing it over the last close to a decade is they struggle consistently with a space to be able to provide the service. And so the idea is that we need an emergency space to run a MAP program to keep people alive during the winter, people that are vulnerable. And so council over the last number of months has recognized that that is a significant hurdle for those groups out there. And if we really want to play a role in protecting those people, that we have to become a more significant partner in that arrangement. The town of Slave Lake still recognizes that, largely we're dealing with individuals that have complex addiction issues and mental health issues, issues with housing. All of these things fall under the provincial government, and has been very frustrating from rural municipalities that there is very little support to actually help these people. And so we're left to delve into areas that we don't have a ton of experience about, or the funds to be able to deal with them. That being said, we have a responsibility to look after people. If there's nothing more important than what we're elected to do as council, is to protect and look after people. And so over the last number of months, we have been looking at a number of options. What we recognize is that anything that we are going to do needs to be temporary. It has to be something we're not at a position where we're able to provide a permanent structure or a permanent program or permanent funding. We do recognize that temporary means just during the winter months, but providing a space so that this organization, this non-for-profit organization of volunteers is able to provide programming is key to ongoing success. There are a number of areas identified around town that we have looked at. We looked at spots at the end of the airport runway along 7th. It was some open land. However, there was a significant challenge there identified was lack of services and lack of pedestrian traffic. We also looked at areas, the town does have a limited amount of available land. We are not a land baron by any means in the town of Slave Lake. And so we did look at one of our temporary housing sites that we had previously, but servicing became an issue for sure. We did look at some vacant sites around where the old daycare used to be downtown, but also didn't feel like that was the right location. And so through all of this, we are going to look at a temporary location within the fire hall site that is our land in the southeast corner. In this southeast corner. This would be fenced, would provide pedestrian traffic, and would be on a trial basis. We understand that this still has to go through some zoning pieces and that it has to go through our normal process of municipal planning commission, and that the Homeless Coalition would have to bring an application forward. Additionally, we also understand that at this point, although we have representatives on the Homeless Coalition, we've been working behind the scenes on this to figure out an option. And they will be getting this information at the same time as the public, and we'll have to decide what makes sense and what works for them. But at this time, we feel that this is the only suitable option for council to look at, a temporary option where we provide space for them to run a program. So with that, we basically have a couple of different options here and costs associated with that. And maybe Kush, I'll let you take over from there.
Thank you, Your Worship, for providing some background on this report. I'll just jump directly into discussion. So town is looking to acquire a temporary structure such as trailer that has the capability of being heated during winter, provides an open space for individuals to sleep on floor mats, and ideally either has a self-contained washroom or potentially a second trailer that would provide washroom facilities. The laydown area would be fenced, an approach will be built, and water sewer services will be brought to the laydown site. Also, permanent services like power and gas will also be brought to the laydown area. The budgetary breakdown can be found in attachment 1. The town administration had reached out to several equipment rental companies and ADCO, inquiring about the available options with temporary structures. Oil field equipment rental companies proposed 12 feet wide by 60 feet long trailer that has open space. And ADCO proposed 2 12 feet wide by 60 feet long trailers stitched together to provide overall floor space of 24 feet in width and 60 feet in length. ADCO presented an option to purchase the temporary structure upfront, or there is a possibility the town can choose to rent for a period of 12 months or 24 months. ADCO also provided option to modify the unit with 2 washroom stalls and kitchenette, with the possibility of adding a microwave and refrigerator. Plan layout for the ADCO temporary structures can be found in attachment 2. Also, important thing to note is ADCO Electric and ADCO Gas intends to offer potential gift in kind of approximately $50,000 towards this project. Council has four options. If you refer to attachment one, attachment one shows all the breakdown of the cost. And we have four options. Number one is we can rent the temporary structure from a equipment rental company for a period of 6 months. The rent will be paid on a month-to-month basis. Second option is we can purchase the ATCO temporary structures upfront. And then, there will be a big upfront cost, but the ongoing operating cost will be minimum compared to other options. Third option is to, again, ATCO proposed that we can also rent those temporary structures for 12 months. And the fourth option is either we can go for 24 months. So council has four options to choose from. The source of funding is yet to be determined. Council may discuss and make a recommendation as appropriate per the option provided.
Okay, so we have four potential options here at this point. Option one, we look at oil field equipment rental or the bunkhouse that is 12 by
60.
That would essentially, we would be spending 84,000 up front and an ongoing operational cost of 35,000. I want to start by saying a huge thank you to ATCO who stepped up with that $50,000 in kind, that no matter what we put there, we need to get services to it. And so they have graciously agreed to put all those in at no cost. We would be paying for the usage of them afterwards. We'd have an electrical and a gas bill, but not having to pay for the servicing is a substantial contribution. So option one, we can basically rent something for 84,000 a year. Option two is we buy something for 230,000, which would actually be twice the size of the one that we're renting. Option 3 and 4 then look at some rental costs of that purchase one that are essentially almost the same price as buying it, so it doesn't really make sense. So realistically, I think we're looking at, do we want to rent something or do we want to buy something? And so with that, I will leave it open to discussion from council. Councillor Adams.
Couple questions. You took the one already where I was questioning the size. One thing I'd like to, a couple questions. One thing I'd like to ask is 720 square feet enough usable space for the homeless coalition to make it happen, or do they require something in the range of 1440 square feet? The other question I'd have to administration would be, is it possible, instead of paying outright $230,000 in the first year and putting that out as an expense in 1 year, if we're able to finance this somehow over a longer period of time? And I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, answers to those questions. So first, the one would be the homeless coalition. Is 720 square feet enough?
So as one of the reps for the homeless coalition, obviously more space is preferred, but ultimately whatever council decides, the homeless coalition would make it work.
Because realistically, at this point, you guys have no other option.
We have no other option. We've tried to find stuff throughout the community. Nothing has come up. So without the town's support, it is about 99% certain we will not have a MAP program this year.
Okay.
How many square feet was last year's rental?
I would have to pull that up. It was definitely larger. But we had some stuff stored on site. We can store some stuff off site if we need to.
Okay. The next question was around administration about funding this versus an outright amount, or if we were to purchase something, could we finance it and debenture it?
Short answer is yes. We believe that you could finance and debenture.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Councillor Ward.
I was just going to make a point of clarification. So the first cost, you had said that the rent in the first year for the rental oil field option was 84,000, but that's not the rent portion. The rent portion is 38, and that the first year costs on all options include 46 in site preparation. So I just wanted to be clear that the rental costs moving forward, we're looking at 38, and then they go down to 35 a year. my support lies more in favor of the rental option for year one, for a couple of reasons. Looking at this, I think there's been some appetite to look at the success of pods in other communities and other solutions. So the reason why I think rental is a good idea is I'm not 100% certain that this is the right option regarding structure, space, sizing, how this goes. So I'd like to review the 2022 to 2023 operations of the Homeless Coalition and the MAP program. I'd like to consult with the other communities regarding their pods, or I'm calling them pods, but I think that's the popular term, scenario. I also think there's some opportunities to lobby the provincial government for funding, especially because there's a number of other communities that are kind of in an uprising right now about it. I'd like to see some public consultation on if this is the best format, like I said, structure wise for the pods. And I also don't want to make a permanent decision this year because as the Homeless Coalition has mentioned, there's been some opportunities, especially with the hiring of their new executive director for grant funding. So some of that grant funding involves potential guarantees from the town for operating costs in the future. I don't feel really comfortable marrying ourselves to a decision and limiting the options that the Homeless Coalition has going forward. So I think for me right now, the rental would be the best option for year one.
Okay, other questions, comments? Councillor Hughes.
I would have to agree with Councillor Ward's assessment of that overall. I think the purchase amount is definitely a lot more steep at this time. I would like to see us get into a rental for this year so that we are providing something and then kind of seeing how it goes on a trial basis this year in that location, and seeing if this is really the right path that we are taking things down. Maybe it is pods, maybe there's a different answer in the future as well. So I think that this just kind of frees us up from any type of heavier purchase and keeps things kind of moving forward in the right direction. And obviously, you know, with their new executive director and being able to hopefully access grant funding as well, that would be something that I hope that they're able to do for the coming years also. So that's my 2 cents.
Councillor Adams.
Things are aligning back in the world. I disagree.
Sorry, Steve.
As far as the outright purchase, if we're able to finance this over a period of time, I want to be realistic and think that this option is not going to be done after year one. This is something that's going to be phased in over time. I feel we have the option to gift in kind or lease back to the Homeless Coalition of this for the long term, and then they can eventually take over that obligation for rent on this facility. The year one cost is a little disproportionate here, that if we are financing it, we're actually looking at $138,000 commitment for that first year, not 230, and compared to an 84,000 for a 1 year shot. Our ongoing cost year over year for half the size is 35,700 compared to us being able to finance it and carry it over. We're then looking at a $14,280 commitment year over year. As far as our financial obligation and the health of our community, and being the town of Slave Lake, I think the purchase of an asset is more beneficial than the exorbitant price of a rental for 1 year, and even going on year over year. To offset that, we do have an asset that if things are changed and we want to change our mind 5 years down the road, we have the option to dispose of the asset and gain back a significant portion of our investment on top of that. Yeah, that's my comments.
Okay, Councillor Ferguson.
Just in response to Councillor Adams' remarks there. The only issue I would have with that approach is it severely limits our ability to get grant funding. So if there's an opportunity for $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 grant, and we go with the purchase option right now, there'll be no chance of that in the future. So I would like to go with the rental option. Like I said, we have hired an executive director. That'll give us an opportunity to peek into the pots, see what grants are available, and hopefully apply for some substantial grant funding for next year and see what is available.
Okay, Councillor Brandel.
Yeah, just to echo what Councillor Ferguson just said. You know, the realtor in me always has to ask the rent versus buy question, right? So the rental is a lot of money. I understand that. And if the town were taking this as a lead and doing this long-term, then I think the purchase option would definitely be the better way to go. But we're just a partner. We're just here to support the Homeless Coalition. And the Homeless Coalition, now that they have the ED, you know, she's got lots of things on her plate and she's going to have lots of balls in the air with and options for, there's the pod option. There was a pallet home just brought back to us today. There's these things that other communities have done and other communities have gotten grants for them. And because we didn't hire the ED until so late in the year, then, you know, we're behind the gun already. So emergency basis, I think the rental is the way to go on this one.
Councillor Adams.
I don't understand how this would exclude you from getting grant money for a purchase, as this could still be purchased from the town. It's not being gifted to the Homeless Coalition as a facility. So that, I feel, argument is not really in place and has to do what the town can afford. And I am being realistic in this. This is not going to be a one-year option for this town. I cannot see how we can expect the Homeless Coalition to adopt this as an emergency situation for 6 months this year and then have a plan and money and financing and in place by next year. It didn't happen this year. It's not going to happen next year. In my opinion, we would be committing to this long-term lease or term, rental piece at $35,000 a year, every year for the next 5 years, which more than covers the payment of purchasing.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Ferguson, do you have your hand up before? No? Other questions, comments? I'll be honest, I'm torn. So I'll just throw in there that I'm totally, when I walked into this room, I was 100% with Councillor Adams. In the sense that, you know, the ability that we have something that's worth something down the road that can be used for anything, that is always more attractive to me than just throwing money away. That being said, I do echo that we have two representatives from Homeless Coalition who are more interested in a rental option because they feel that there's substantial grant money that could come back that would offset these costs to town of Slave Lake taxpayers, which is definitely attractive to me. I understand Councillor Adams' point that we could turn around and sell them that, but theoretically they don't A, have to buy that. They B, might not feel that that's the right fit. And C, knowing how the government works, that might exclude us from being eligible for some of those grants. And so that does concern me a little bit. And so I will say that, you know, part of the reason too that we send some of these councillors out to these committees is that we appreciate their insight and their passion and the time they're working on. And, you know, I got to listen to what they have to say. And what they're also saying is they don't even know if this 100% is the right idea, that there could be other options. And so knowing that, I'm going to go with the rest of you and think that the rental is probably a good thing for year one. That being said, if we continue to just rent in year 2 and year 3, I think we should look at a different option because we're just throwing money away. Councillor Ward and then Councillor Adams.
I agree that it should be revisited in future years. I'm going to put a motion on the table. I would like to make a motion that administration proceed with monthly rental of temporary structure from oil field equipment rental company.
Further discussion, Councillor Adams.
Knowing what our need is and how our capacity was affected in the other space, which I'm estimating at about 2,000 square feet. How is the Homeless Coalition going to be able to function on 720? That is honestly just practicality. It's a third the size.
Well, there's an average of 8 to 12 people a night in the winter based off statistics last year. I believe in some of the higher months to get as high as 19, but you find a way to work with the space that you have, just plain and simple.
And the programming was also, because
And-
there was
and yes.
COVID, there was COVID considerations and programming considerations for the
Yes.
past years.
There was programming that was being done. They're all daytime programming. So, you know, having people a little bit farther apart was a little more of a necessity. So I am confident that, you know, there might be nights where it's a little tighter than we would like, but the Homeless Coalition will find a way to make it work.
And if it is temporary, then it's temporary. Motion is on the floor. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. Okay, grab Counselor Graham up there. So Mayor's Corner, thanks, Kush. Mayor's Corner there, as quick as I can be. First off, council will not be having a council meeting next week. We're all headed to AUMA, but I don't think it's called AUMA anymore. It's AM convention. Essentially, we've got some meetings set up with ministers. We'll be meeting with forestry and agriculture. We'll be meeting with health. We'll be meeting with municipal affairs to talk about funding. We'll be meeting with policing. Are some of the ones that have been identified already and more popping up all the time. It's a great opportunity for council to understand and what a number of our colleagues are doing. And so there's a lot of networking that goes on. There's lots of information sessions. There's, meetings with government and ministers themselves. And so it will be a very busy week. And so I encourage council to get the rest. Intermunicipal, I can't say how excited I am to see some of those agreements move forward. I talked about it earlier, but it's there's a lot of municipalities out there that don't get along with their neighbors, that this is a mountain for them to overcome. And so I don't want to sell short just how much hard work and goes into keeping that relationship strong and working together. And I just want to commend the MD for working with us and recognizing that as a region, we do better together than we do apart. Homelessness. There are going to be people tonight that look at this decisions that were made today and say, thank God you guys are on the right track, and others that are going to say you guys are totally a bunch of idiots. And I will say, welcome to being a political official in a rural municipality. And at the end of the day, it's tough. I think there's a variety of perspectives out there. And people have never had such a varying amount of perspective, I find the level of passion and engagement and opinions post-COVID is substantially different than pre-COVID. And so I want to say just to council and to administration and to the Homeless Coalition, and that those decisions are never easy and you take a lot of flack for what you do. But at the end of the day, the intention from council all along has been, we have an obligation to protect and look after people. And it's not an easy task to do, to figure out where that is, what it is, and how do we fund it. And so I encourage the Homeless Coalition to keep moving forward. I encourage administration to keep working with them. I encourage council to keep advocating to the province, because this is a provincial responsibility. It is not solely on the backs of municipalities. But when no one else steps up, sometimes you just got to bear it and deal with it. And I think that's where we're at. Communication, I will say that communication has been lacking for sure. We've had a number, COVID was not the easiest thing to go through. We've had a number of significant human resource shortages within the town of Slave Lake. On top of that, there's nobody sitting on council here that is retired, bored, or sitting at home with nothing to do. And so they're finding a lot of the rest of their own lives busy and demanding with new things that are happening post-COVID, with staffing shortages, with increased business and things happening. And it's not an easy job. And so I just want to say thanks to all you guys for working hard on that. But I also want to apologize to the public that I think that we used to do a better job communicating what was going on and what was happening. And I recognize that we need to do a better job of that. And so I think in the weeks to come, you'll see some more of the videos coming out. But I also communication has to come from an organization. It can't come from an individual. And so I'm excited by these things like Voyant, like our new project that we're looking at here with public engagement, that we're looking at tools at how to do a better job of that, because public engagement is important, but it's also important that we do it in a structured way, that we get meaningful engagement out of it. And so I appreciate administration looking and spending the time to look at those options. We are not perfect. There's lots of work still to be done. But I will say the taxpayers, I know you don't know what's going on behind the scenes all the time, but I will tell you, you got a strong, passionate group here that cares and wants to do something. So you can find it a way to support them in doing that. I encourage you to do so because it's going to keep them here longer. With that,
Hey, when you originally asked, if we wanted to knock stuff off, I thought that homeless discussion would take longer. Do you want to add that back on and just power through it?
no, because we have like 7 or 8 things for a closed session yet, and the night is far from over. So I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Any